Hey guys, good evening.
I'm Mr. 13 o'clock.
Every night I share 13 terrifying true stories you won't forget. So hit that subscribe button and comment below where are you watching from. Now settle in, the night is waiting. The strange how we trust sleepovers. We gather in strange homes, surrounded by unfamiliar hallways and creaky floorboards, letting our guards down just because there's laughter and popcorn. But some houses keep secrets, and some people don't sleep. It was late October when Jonah was invited to stay the night at his friend Will's house. They'd met in 8th grade, and although they weren't best friends, they got along well enough to trade dark jokes and talk about scary movies in gym class. Will lived in an old colonial-style house on the edge of town, the kind with thin walls and doors that didn't shut quite right. Jonah's parents didn't ask many questions. They knew Will's family by name, but not well. When Jonah arrived that Friday night, the air was cold and smelled like dried leaves. Will's house had a dim orange glow from antique-looking lamps. His mom greeted Jonah briefly, then vanished into the back of the house. His dad wasn't around. They played video games until almost midnight. Nothing strange. Just the usual adolescent banter, energy drinks, and leftover Halloween candy. At around 12:30 a.m., Will yawned and said they should probably head to bed. That's when he mentioned casually, "Oh yeah, you'll be sleeping in the guest room downstairs. My room's upstairs, my little sister's is next to it. And the upstairs bathroom's broken anyway." Jonah didn't question it. The guest room was small but cozy. The bed was low to the ground, and the only window was partially covered by an old lace curtain. There was a mirror across from the bed, tall and cracked in one corner. The kind of mirror that feels older than it should be. Jonah lay down and stared at the ceiling for a while, hearing the occasional thump from above. He assumed it was Will walking around or closing a door. He checked his phone.
1:27 nachts.
Then something shifted. He suddenly became aware that he wasn't alone. There was a figure standing just to the left of the door. It wasn't moving, just watching. Jonah's breath caught in his throat. His first thought was Will playing a prank, but the shape was too small. Then he thought maybe Will's sister had wandered downstairs. But she would have said something. This girl didn't move. She just stood there, facing the bed. She was wearing a pale, long-sleeved dress that looked almost vintage. Her hair hung straight down, too long to be practical. Jonah sat up slowly and whispered, "Hey, are you okay?" No response. Then she stepped forward. Just one step. No sound. Her bare feet didn't creak the wooden floor. Jonah scrambled for his phone, the screen lighting up the room faintly. But when he looked again, she was gone. The room was empty. There were no footsteps, no door creaks, just silence. Jonah barely slept that night. He kept the phone light on until the battery died and jumped at every sound. He told Will the next morning, expecting him to laugh, but Will didn't. He went quiet. Then he said something Jonah wouldn't forget. "Yeah, you saw her too." Jonah stared. "What do you mean?" Will shrugged. "She shows up in the guest room sometimes. My cousin saw her once. My mom said it's just dreams. But..." He trailed off. "You sure she was standing by the door?" Jonah nodded. Will gave a tight-lipped smile. "Yeah, she always starts there." In the weeks that followed, Jonah couldn't shake the memory. But the strangest part wasn't the girl herself. It was the mirror. He kept thinking about how, for that brief moment, she wasn't reflected in it. Like she didn't belong to the room. He became obsessed with figuring out what he saw. He asked classmates if they knew anything about Will's house. Most didn't, but one girl, Kira, said something odd. "My grandma used to clean houses," she said. "She told me about that place once. Said she quit because the little girl in the hallway wouldn't stop watching her. Thought it was one of the kids playing tricks. But the family only had a baby back then." Jonah never returned to Will's house. They drifted apart soon after. But the memory of that night kept clawing its way back. A year later, he was scrolling through an old community Facebook page when he stumbled across a black and white photo posted by a local historian. It showed a family in front of a house, Will's house but older before it was restored. In the background, just behind the parlor window, a face was barely visible. A girl standing still. Too still. Jonah saved the photo and zoomed in. There was something wrong with her expression. Her eyes were wide, her mouth slightly open, almost like she'd been frozen mid-sentence. The caption read, "The Melrose family, 1931. Youngest daughter, Annabelle, died in her sleep just weeks after this photo was taken." Jonah never told anyone, but he visited the house again. Just once. He walked past in broad daylight and glanced at the guest room window. There, behind the lace curtain, was the cracked mirror. Still facing the bed. Still waiting. What unsettled him wasn't the memory of the girl, but the idea that she hadn't meant harm. That maybe she was just trying to understand him. Watching, not with malice but curiosity. Like she didn't know she was dead. And worse, like she didn't want to be alone. It started with a whisper. Not the kind you mistake for the wind or a distant TV. This whisper was personal. It knew names. Lena was 12 the night she stayed over at her friend Kayla's house. A weathered colonial tucked into a dense patch of woods in upstate Pennsylvania. The house was the kind you passed without noticing. Set too far back from the road and surrounded by trees that never quite let the sunlight in. Kayla had moved there 6 months earlier, and this was Lena's first sleepover since the transfer. From the outside, the house looked normal enough. But the inside held a stillness, the kind that felt practiced. Like silence was a rule the walls had learned to obey. By midnight, the sleepover was already slipping into that strange liminal space. Half dreams, half sugar-fueled giggles. The girls had made a fort in the living room. Pillows, blankets, glow sticks, a bag of chips between them, and ghost stories on YouTube humming low in the background. It was during one of those stories that Lena first heard it. At first, she thought it came from the speaker. A glitch in the audio. A soft, strained voice that hissed. Not screamed. Underneath. She paused the video. The word didn't repeat, but her stomach tightened. "Did you hear that?" Lena asked. Kayla shrugged. "The ghost video?" "No," it said, "underneath." Like whispering. Kayla's face lost a bit of its color. She forced a smile, too quick. "It's probably my dad's pipes. They're super old. They creak and hiss and all that." But Lena knew the difference between plumbing and presence. Pipes don't whisper your name. She didn't say anything else. Not yet. The second time happened an hour later. Kayla had fallen asleep. Lena wasn't far behind. But just as she was drifting, the voice returned. Closer now, just beyond the fort's edge. "Lena." It didn't sound angry. It sounded curious, like something testing its voice. A child with too much space to echo in. She bolted upright. The room was dark except for the dying flicker of a glow stick. Kayla stirred beside her. Then Lena noticed something that hadn't been there earlier. The floor vent, just behind the recliner, was open. Not broken, not shifted. Open. As if it had been removed. She crawled over, her breath uneven, and leaned just close enough to peer in. Nothing but black. But then, another whisper. This time it wasn't her name. It said, "Come see." And below the words, laughter. Not full laughter. Just the start of one. A stifled, breathy chuckle. The kind that comes when someone knows something you don't. She backed away slowly, crawled back into the fort, and stayed awake until the light started leaking through the windows. When Kayla woke up, Lena asked about the vent. Kayla didn't look surprised. She didn't look curious, either. She just said, "It does that sometimes." Lena pressed, "Do your parents know about it?" Kayla hesitated. "They don't hear it. I think the house only talks to kids." That sentence sat wrong with Lena. Like it wasn't Kayla speaking. Like she was remembering something she hadn't meant to say out loud. After breakfast, Lena insisted on calling her mom to pick her up. Kayla didn't argue. As she waited on the porch, she noticed the small, narrow door around the side of the house, almost hidden behind the lattice. A crawl space. The lock was old, but freshly scratched. Not broken, not rusted, scratched, as if something inside had tried to get out. She turned to go back in, but the door was shut behind her. That night, Lena had dreams she never fully remembered. Just flashes. A small room, damp with cold. A child's voice repeating underneath again and again. And a pair of yellowing eyes, unblinking, unhuman, watching her from behind with slats. Weeks passed. Then months. Lena never went back to Kayla's house. But sometimes, when she was alone at night, she'd hear that same whisper through her bedroom vent. Faint, patient. It never said her name again. It didn't need to. She knew it was still watching. And it was waiting. Years later, Lena would find out something chilling. The property had once been part of a foster home in the 1950s. Records were sparse. Most were lost in a basement flood, or so they said. But the rumors stuck. Children who disappeared. Complaints ignored. One account from a caseworker mentioned a boy who lived in the walls. Though it was dismissed as imagination, the crawl space had been sealed in 1972. Until someone at some point opened it again. Maybe Kayla's parents knew. Maybe they didn't. But the way Kayla had spoken, too calm, too rehearsed, it felt like something had been whispered to her, too, long before Lena ever arrived. Something that made a deal. Because sometimes houses don't haunt people. Sometimes people haunt houses. They feed them, they obey them, and in return, they're allowed to leave. But only if someone else stays behind. And if you've ever spent the night at a friend's house and heard something whisper from the vents, just remember, it might not be the pipes, and it might not be calling you. It might just be waiting for someone new. They're watching from everywhere. Subscribe before it's too late, and tell me, where are you watching from? It's strange what you remember from childhood sleepovers. The sugary snacks, the cheap horror movies, the awkward sleeping bags on hardwood floors. But sometimes what stays with you isn't the fun or the laughter. It's the thing that shouldn't have happened. The thing no one could explain. Back in middle school, my friend Tyler invited a few of us over for his birthday weekend. His family had just moved into an old house on the outskirts of town. A gray two-story with weather-worn shutters and ivy creeping up the sides like veins. It had that smell older houses get. Wood, dust, and something faintly metallic like rust clinging to the air. There were 5 of us. Me, Tyler, Jared, Sean, and his cousin Lucas, who we barely knew. The plan was simple. Games, pizza, maybe try to stay up all night. But we never made it that far. Tyler's house had a basement. That was the first thing he told us when we walked in. Not in a casual way. He pointed to the heavy door near the kitchen and said, "We don't really go down there. My dad says it's just storage and the floor's kind of messed up." It wasn't locked, but it had a thick bolt, as if it should be. We didn't think much of it at the time. Every old house has something off-limits. Later that night, around midnight, Sean dared Tyler to go down there. Typical sleepover bravado. Tyler hesitated, but Lucas, quiet, pale Lucas, was the one who said, "Let's all go. It'll be fun." The basement light was dim, a pull-string bulb that swung slightly when we stepped onto the creaking stairs. The air was cold and smelled stale, like something had been closed off too long. At the bottom was a wide open space. Boxes, old furniture, a rusted washer and dryer, and near the back wall, something we didn't expect. A narrow door made of warped wood, with an iron latch and a heavy padlock. We looked at Tyler. He shook his head. "I didn't know that was there." The weird part was that the wall around it looked newer than the rest. Like it had been rebuilt, fresh concrete, smoother paint. Someone had gone out of their way to close it off, but not permanently. Of course, that just made us more curious. Sean started joking that there was probably treasure behind it. Jared guessed a wine cellar. Lucas just stared at the door without saying anything. Finally, Tyler went upstairs and came back with a ring of keys. We all watched as he tried them one by one, until one clicked. The padlock opened. The air behind the door was different. Thicker, colder. Not like the rest of the basement. The space inside was small. Maybe the size of a walk-in closet, but something about it made my stomach twist. There was nothing inside but an old twin bed frame with no mattress, and a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. The walls were bare concrete, and in the far corner, scratched into the floor, were dozens of lines. Tallies. Like someone had been counting days. Sean stepped in and immediately froze. Guys, is this blood? We rushed in behind him, but what he pointed to wasn't blood. At least not anymore. It looked like rust, but the pattern, circular with jagged points, felt intentional. Like a symbol. Something ritualistic. And then Lucas laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. You found it, he said. We turned. Tyler was already backing toward the door. What do you mean found it? I asked. Lucas didn't answer right away. He walked to the center of the room, knelt beside the strange marking, and traced part of it with his finger. My uncle lived here before Tyler's family. He disappeared 10 years ago. They never found him. None of us said anything. It was as if the room had swallowed the sound. A low, humming silence pressed against our ears. He used to talk about the door, Lucas continued. Said it was never supposed to be opened. Said something lived behind it. Not a person. Not an animal. Just something. Jared tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. You're messing with us. Lucas looked up, and his eyes were different, distant, unfocused. He said the house wanted to be fed. That if you didn't feed it, it would take. Tyler slammed the door shut. We practically ran up the stairs. No one said anything the rest of the night. We didn't even sleep. Just lay there in silence, listening to the creaks of the house around us. The next morning, the basement door was bolted again. Tyler swore he didn't do it. For weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about that room. The scratches, the symbol, the cold, felt wrong. Like it wasn't just part of the house, but something beneath it. Like the house had a stomach, and that room was its throat. A few months later, Tyler's family moved out. He never explained why, and we didn't ask. The house stayed empty for a while. Then someone new moved in. I drove past it last year, and saw the basement windows had been sealed shut. With cement. But here's the part that still keeps me up sometimes. A year after that sleepover, Lucas was found wandering the woods outside town. His clothes were torn and he was muttering nonsense. They brought him in, tried to get answers. But the only thing he kept repeating was, I found the door. I let it out. And he smiled. They said the second floor was off limits. That's what Harper remembered most. How casually her friend's mom had mentioned it, almost as if it were an afterthought. Don't go upstairs, girls. There's a lot of stuff being stored up there, and the staircase is rickety. Just stay downstairs. Simple, polite, but oddly emphasized. Harper was spending the night at her friend Lindsay's house. They were both 14. It was the kind of sleepover that should have been ordinary. Popcorn, scary movies, whispers about classmates, and half-hearted ghost stories told under blankets. But it wasn't. Lindsay's house stood alone at the end of a narrow road lined with trees that seemed to lean in unnaturally, as if eavesdropping. It was an older home, Victorian, Harper guessed, with weather-worn siding and a rusted swing set that creaked even when the wind was still. But what stood out most was the second-floor window. It was huge, tall and narrow with foggy glass that distorted whatever lay behind it. From the driveway, you couldn't help but notice it. A single pale curtain hung inside, always drawn just enough to hide what was within. Harper stared at it more than she wanted to admit, and she swore, even before sunset, she thought she saw the curtain move. By the time night settled in, Harper had almost forgotten about it. Almost. They set up sleeping bags in the living room, right beneath a fan that hummed constantly like static in the background. Lindsay's mom had gone to bed early, saying she had a migraine. Her dad wasn't home, apparently away for work, although Harper hadn't seen any signs of a man living there.
No chus, no case, no extra toutrucho.
It was after 1 a.m. when the movie ended. Some old horror flick that wasn't very scary. The kind that tried too hard. The real fear started after. As they lay on the floor, trading stories and daring each other to say Bloody Mary in the bathroom mirror, Harper's eyes kept drifting to the hallway that led toward the stairs. She didn't know why. Then came the creak. Subtle. Far away. Like weight shifting on old wood. Did you hear that? Harper whispered. Lindsay paused, then shook her head, forcing a laugh. It's just this house. Everything creaks. But Harper wasn't convinced. It had sounded too intentional, like someone testing a step. She sat up, heart thudding. The hallway was dark, but the faintest line of moonlight spilled in from the kitchen window, catching the edge of the stair railing. Then something changed. A shadow, a faint, long, moved across the far wall. There was no sound.
No footsteps.
Just movement, as if someone or something had silently passed by the top of the stairs. Harper froze. I thought your mom went to bed. She did. Lindsay's voice was tight now. Her bravado was gone. Without speaking, both girls slowly turned to look toward the living room windows. The curtains were open just a crack, letting in enough moonlight to bathe the floor in pale gray. Harper's eyes wandered, instinctively, to that second-floor window. And there it was, a face, white, motionless, half obscured by the curtain, just staring. She blinked. Once, twice, still there. Lindsay gasped. Harper grabbed her hand. It didn't move. It didn't react. Just watched. Expressionless. The features weren't clear, distorted by the old glass, but what stood out were the eyes. Hollow. Too wide. Like they weren't made for blinking. Mom! Lindsay called out. Her voice was barely audible. No response. Harper stood. She didn't want to. Every fiber of her body screamed to stay still. But she moved to the window slowly, as if trying not to draw attention. Her legs felt like rubber. Her throat dry. She leaned forward just enough to peer through the crack in the curtain. Nothing. The window was empty. The face was gone. But something else was there. Smudges. Small, greasy marks on the inside of the glass. Like fingertips dragging down. Or pressing in. Harper backed away. What was it? Lindsay asked, voice trembling. I don't know. But she did know. That thing hadn't been looking out. It had been looking in. They tried waking Lindsay's mom. Knocked on her door. No answer. They didn't want to open it. Something felt wrong. Back in the living room, they debated calling someone. Anyone. But Lindsay's phone was dead, and Harper's had no signal. Just that infuriating SOS-only message. Outside, the wind had picked up. The swing creaked again. Except now it didn't sound like the wind. It sounded like breathing. They shut the curtains. Turned off every light. Hid beneath their blankets like children. And yet, Harper still knew. The second-floor window was behind her. Felt like eyes on her back. Heavy. Focused. Waiting. Hours passed. Somehow they slept. Or at least, drifted into something like sleep. By morning, everything looked normal. The window, still foggy. Still empty. Lindsay's mom acted like nothing had happened. She said she never heard them knock. She looked pale. Tired. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. As they left, Harper turned one last time toward the house. The second-floor curtain shifted. Just slightly. And behind it, the faintest suggestion of white. That should have been the end. But 2 weeks later, Lindsay moved schools. Harper tried texting her. No answer. Eventually, curiosity got the better of her. She asked around. Someone told her Lindsay's family left town. Suddenly. No warning. Just gone. Harper looked up the house online. Found an old real estate listing. There was something strange in the photos, taken from inside the house before it was sold. The second floor was unfinished. Just dust, insulation, and a single window. But what caught her attention was the caption beneath one of the photos. Window facing north, original glass still intact. Permanently sealed shut. Sealed. No one could have been standing behind that curtain. Not unless they were already trapped inside. Or had never left. Or worse, never belonged in this world to begin with. It was supposed to be a joke. Just a silly game we found online. Something to pass the time at a sleepover when the parents were asleep and the snacks were gone. But the moment we asked our first question, we realized something else was listening. We were 13. Old enough to think we were invincible, young enough to still be afraid of the dark. It was me, Ava, Jen, and Maddie. crowded in Ava's basement, surrounded by pizza boxes, sleeping bags, and the glow of a single lava lamp. The kind of night where nothing felt real. Around 1:30 a.m., when our phone started to die and the sugar crash hit, Maddie pulled out a folded piece of paper. She said her older cousin told her about a game that was popular on dark web forums, a sort of sleepover seance. You needed a candle, a quiet room, and 4 people. Perfect. It was called the answer game. The rules were basic. You sit in a circle, place a candle in the center, and ask a yes or no question aloud. If the flame flickers, the answer is yes. If it goes still, it means no. And if the flame goes out, you're not supposed to keep playing. We didn't take it seriously. It sounded like Ouija light. But that's how all bad stories start, right? With someone laughing while they open the wrong door. Ava lit the candle and dimmed the overhead lights. The flame stood tall, quiet, steady. We asked stupid things at first. Will I ever get a boyfriend? Flicker. Does Mr. Hensley wear a wig? Flicker again. We laughed. It was harmless. It felt like the kind of game that only works if you want it to. But then Jen asked something different. Is someone here with us? The flame didn't flicker. It whipped violently sideways, then went still. We all looked at each other. No one laughed that time. Ava, trying to break the tension, joked that maybe we summoned Mr. Hensley's hairpiece. But the candle flickered, quick, deliberate. Felt like something was responding. Did you flicker for Ava's joke? Maddie asked. No movement. I felt cold, but not scared. Not yet. I wanted to push it further, to know if we were imagining it. So I asked, can you hear us right now? The flame didn't flicker. It bent, slowly, to the left, held still like that, then returned upright. None of us breathed. It didn't feel like wind. Felt like intention. That's when the basement light went out. Just for a second, one sharp flick. We all gasped, and Ava's voice cracked as she asked, did the bulb just blow? The candle flickered. Once. Then again. Do you want to hurt us? Maddie whispered. Nothing. Then the flame dipped so low it nearly went out, then surged back tall. What does that mean? Jen asked. No one could answer. Ava wanted to stop, but the game's last rule said you had to ask to end. So I did. Can we stop now? The candle didn't move. I asked again. Still nothing. Ava's hand was trembling as she reached to blow the candle out. But before she did, the flame shrank and began to hiss, like it was trying to speak. I swear I heard something, a faint click behind us, like a door unlatching. We turned, but the basement door was closed. Still, something had changed. That was when Ava's dog began barking upstairs. Loud, aggressive, panicked. We hadn't heard him all night. Then we heard footsteps. Fast, heavy, running across the floor above. Not toward us, away. Like someone had just left the house. Ava's face was pale. Is someone upstairs? Maddie called her dad's cell. No answer. Then she checked the security camera app on her phone. The screen showed a live feed of the front porch, and someone was standing on it. A person in a hoodie, facing the door. But the camera feed glitched. When it returned, the figure was gone. We didn't sleep that night. We just sat with the lights on, waiting for Ava's parents to wake up. They hadn't heard anything. And the camera footage? Deleted. No backup. Like it never recorded. We all agreed never to play again. Ava threw the candle out. But something lingered. I started waking up at exactly 1:30 a.m. every night. I check my phone. Always the same time. For 3 weeks straight. Then Maddie told me her bedroom light had started turning on by itself at night. Jen's phone kept glitching, only when she opened the flashlight. And Ava said her dog refused to go down to the basement anymore. We don't talk about it now. Not really. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed, I feel something shift. A cold draft. A faint hiss. Like a breath. And once, just once, I tried to test it. I lit a candle at 1:30 a.m. Alone. I asked, "Are you still there?" The flame flickered, then bent sideways. And somewhere in the dark behind me, I heard something answer back. This story isn't over yet. Hit subscribe to follow the shadows. It started with the sound of footsteps, light, deliberate, almost playful, like someone pacing. But the rest of the house was dark, and everyone was supposed to be asleep. It was the middle of January, and the night air coming through the cracked window in Evan's room bit at the skin like tiny needles. The room was filled with the usual trappings of a 7th-grade sleepover. Sleeping bags, candy wrappers, empty soda cans, and a faint smell of microwave popcorn. Evan's mom had already yelled at them to quiet down hours ago. By now, it was well past 2 a.m. Jake was the first to notice. He sat up in his sleeping bag and whispered, "Do you hear that?" The others, Dylan, Mason, and Tyler, froze. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. Then the footsteps came again. This time closer. Down the hallway. Slow. Measured. Just outside the door. Evan laughed nervously. "It's probably my little brother. He sleepwalks sometimes." But something about the way he said it didn't feel convincing. Like he was trying to reassure himself more than anyone else. Jake crawled to the door and pressed his ear against it. He flinched back immediately. "There's someone standing there," he hissed. "Breathing." They all stared at the door, holding their breath. But no knock came. No movement. Nothing. Just a heavy silence hanging in the air like fog. Eventually, they convinced themselves it was just Evan's brother, Ben, being weird in his sleep again. Evan even opened the door to prove it. The hallway was empty. That should have been the end of it. But an hour later, Tyler woke up to a sound no one wants to hear at 3:12 a.m. Laughter. Low. Croaky. Coming from the kitchen. He nudged Dylan awake. "Dude, someone's laughing." Together, they got up and tiptoed toward the sound. The kitchen light was off, but the refrigerator cast a faint glow across the room. Just enough to see the silhouette of someone standing in the middle of the kitchen. It was Ben, Evan's little brother. Only he wasn't moving. He was just standing there, facing the wall, shoulders slightly hunched. One foot turned inward like it was broken, and his mouth was open, wide open, like he was smiling way too hard, like his cheeks were straining to hold it. But the worst part? His eyes were open too. "Ben," Dylan whispered. No reaction. Tyler flipped on the light. Ben didn't flinch. He just stood there, grinning. Then, very slowly, he lifted one hand and pointed toward the hallway behind them. They both turned. Nothing was there. When they turned back around, Ben was gone. They ran back to Evan's room, panicked, trying to explain what they'd seen. Evan sat up, wide-eyed. He's never done that before. Usually he just walks around and goes back to bed. Mason scoffed. "You guys are messing with us." But none of them slept after that. At around 4 a.m., Jake, who had the brilliant idea to keep his phone recording just in case, nudged everyone awake. "You need to hear this." He played back the audio. At first, just the occasional sound of them snoring. Then, at exactly 3:33 a.m., the recording picked up a faint whisper. A voice none of them recognized. It said, "He's not sleeping. He's watching." They stared at each other, speechless. The next morning, they asked Evan's parents if Ben had been sleepwalking again. His mom blinked. "Ben? No, he's been at his grandparents' all weekend. Took him out yesterday afternoon." Evan's heart dropped. "Wait, what? You've been hearing things?" His dad chuckled, sipping coffee. But Evan was pale. He pulled out his phone and showed them a photo he'd taken earlier that morning, just after they'd finally worked up the courage to search the house. It was of a single, small, dirty footprint on the hallway tile. It looked like it had been made by a bare foot, one that was dragging slightly like the person was limping. Still, the parents insisted there was no way Ben had been there. They called his grandparents. Confirmed. Ben had been 300 miles away the whole time. So then who or what had been pacing the hallway? A few days later, Evan found something in the closet. Something none of them had noticed before. An old wooden box tucked behind some winter coats. Inside were two faded photographs. One of a boy who looked eerily like Ben, only from decades ago. The other of a family none of them recognized, standing in front of the very same house. Only it looked older, more run down. In the corner of the photo, just barely visible, was a strange shape. A small figure, standing by the window, smiling. Evan flipped the photo over. Written in shaky handwriting were the words, "Do not open the closet after dark." He remembers faces. That night, Evan didn't sleep. He sat in bed, lights on, trying to convince himself it was just an old photo left behind by the previous owners. But sometime after midnight, the light flickered out. Then came the footsteps. Again, slow, pacing, like before. Only this time, they stopped outside his door. A long silence, then a soft, unmistakable sound. Breathing, heavy, hungry. Evan held his breath. Then he heard the voice again, this time clearer. He's not sleeping. He's waiting. From that night on, Evan swore he wasn't alone in the house. Shadows moved where they shouldn't. His dreams were filled with that smiling boy. And every so often, he'd find those same footprints on the tile, leading from the hallway to the closet. The others never stayed over again. Jake deleted the recording, said he couldn't sleep with it on his phone. But sometimes, late at night, if Evan was awake at the right hour, he'd see a shape move in the corner of his vision. Small, grinning, with eyes wide open, watching, and never blinking. It started with a knock. Not the kind that comes from a door down the hall or someone tapping on the window to get in. This knock came from inside the closet. A slow, deliberate thud, like the soft knock of knuckles on hollow wood, muffled through a barrier that shouldn't have anyone behind it. Avery was 12. It was her first sleepover at her cousin Leah's house, and everything had the buzz of something new and exciting. Leah lived out in the quieter part of town, in one of those aging two-story homes where every floorboard groaned like it had secrets to tell. The room she slept in that night had peeling floral wallpaper, a cracked window that let in the occasional whine of wind, and an old wooden closet with slatted doors that never quite closed all the way. That closet stood across from the bed, angled just enough so that the sliver of darkness between its doors stared directly at her all night. A black line like a vertical pupil. The girls had spent the evening playing with glow-in-the-dark bracelets, whispering scary stories, and daring each other to stay up until dawn. But Avery had never been very good at resisting sleep. Sometime around 1:30 a.m., she drifted off while Leah was still whispering something about a girl who could hear people dreaming. And that's when she heard the knock. She thought it was part of the dream, at first. But the sound came again. Thud, thud, thud. 3 knocks. Methodical, quiet, intentional. Her eyes opened into darkness. The room was bathed in the eerie glow of a lava lamp on Leah's dresser, casting everything in slow-moving reds and purples. She turned her head slowly, expecting to see Leah up and messing around. But her cousin was asleep, her back turned, her breathing slow and steady. The closet door stood exactly as it had earlier, barely ajar. Just enough to leave room for imagination. Just enough to suggest something watching. Avery told herself it was the house. Old pipes, wood contracting, all the typical things grown-ups say. But then it knocked again, louder this time. Hud, hud, hud. She sat up, paralyzed between childhood curiosity and a growing dread she didn't yet have words for. She stared at the closet, trying to measure the darkness inside. No movement. No breathing, just that slit of black. Then, from Leah's bed, a whisper. Don't answer it. Avery's head snapped toward her cousin. But Leah didn't move. She was asleep, face turned to the wall, breathing steady. She looked back at the closet. Leah, she whispered. Was that you? No reply. She laid back down, pulled the blanket over her head like a shield, and counted backward from 50. She didn't remember falling asleep, only waking again, not to the knock but to the sound of something breathing, shallow, ragged, coming from across the room. The closet door was open wider now, not fully open but wider than before, enough to see that the inside wasn't entirely dark. Something was moving in there. She wanted to wake Leah, to scream, but her throat felt locked, like a dream state paralysis had followed her into the waking world. Instead, she stared, paralyzed, silent. Then, Something stepped forward inside the closet. Not out and not into the room, but just closer to the edge, close enough that the slatted doors caught the outline of its movement. It had no defined shape, no glowing eyes, just a presence. It was the kind of darkness that felt aware of you, a living silence, and it was waiting. Then the knock again, from inside. This time it wasn't on the door. It was on the wall, the back wall of the closet. 3 knocks, slow, like someone trying to get out of something deeper than just a closet. Avery whispered again, voice cracking with fear, "Leah?" And Leah answered, voice still turned toward the wall. "Don't let it in. Whatever you do, don't open the door. It doesn't want out. It wants you in." Again, Avery turned to her cousin. This time, Leah was sitting upright, eyes closed, mouth moving, sleep-talking, or something else. Avery scrambled to turn on the lamp, but the bulb popped as soon as she touched it. The room fell into a deeper kind of shadow, broken only by the lava lamp's slow undulations. When she turned back to the closet, the door was shut. Completely. No sound. No movement. Just the echo of the knock in her memory. And Leah's words, now echoing in her head. The next morning, sunlight felt unreal. The house smelled like cinnamon pancakes, and Leah was already downstairs like nothing had happened. When Avery asked about the knocking, Leah blinked like she didn't understand. "You must have dreamed it," she said. "That closet's always locked. It doesn't open. My mom stores old photo albums in there or something." But Avery had seen it. It was open. It moved. Later that afternoon, curiosity got the better of her. While Leah was outside, Avery crept back upstairs. The closet door was shut tight. She tried the handle, it wouldn't budge. But she noticed something new. On the wood near the handle, 3 faint marks, scratched into the paint. 3 vertical lines, like someone or something had been on the inside trying to claw its way out. She never went back for another sleepover. But the story doesn't end there. Years later, Avery was cleaning out old boxes in her own attic, helping her mom go through storage. She found a photograph from that sleepover, one she didn't remember being taken. It was of her and Leah, both asleep. The angle was strange, as if the photo had been taken from across the room. Behind them, in the corner of the shot, the closet stood half open. And just behind the slats, a shape, barely visible, a hand, pressed against the inside of the door, like it never left, and maybe it never will. Sleepovers are supposed to be safe. A night of laughter, snacks, secrets, and maybe a scary movie or two. But some sleepovers leave behind questions that never get answered, and memories that refuse to fade. It was the summer of 2009, and 12-year-old Ryan had invited his best friend Mason over for a weekend sleepover. They'd been inseparable since the 3rd grade, same classes, same hobbies, even the same bike model. Mason's parents had recently moved to a neighboring town, so they didn't see each other as often. The sleepover was meant to be a reunion, but it turned into something else entirely. Ryan's house sat near the edge of a wooded neighborhood in Pennsylvania. It wasn't isolated, but it had a certain stillness at night, a sort of quiet that you could feel pressing in. That Friday, the boys did everything kids that age loved. Rode bikes until sunset, scarfed down pizza, and played games until the early hours of the morning. By 2:45 a.m., they were lying on the floor in sleeping bags, watching static flicker on a TV after a horror DVD ended. The living room was dim, lit only by the aquarium glow from a corner tank. Ryan remembers Mason asking, out of nowhere, "Do you ever hear things in this house when everyone's asleep?" The question came too suddenly. Ryan said no, but Mason didn't seem convinced. That's when the scratching started. Not loud, barely noticeable at first. A faint, rhythmic scrape coming from the back hallway, where the basement door was. Ryan froze. Mason sat up, alert. The scratching stopped as quickly as it began. Mason whispered, "Is someone awake?" Ryan shrugged. They tiptoed to check. Everyone was asleep. Parents, sister, even the family dog was passed out on the couch. Still, the feeling lingered, that tension in the air when something's watching. Ryan brushed it off. Maybe a mouse. Maybe the heater. Mason, though, kept glancing toward the hallway like he knew something wasn't right. By 3:08 a.m., they were settling back in, trying to sleep. Ryan remembers drifting off, and then waking to Mason quietly zipping up his sleeping bag. "What are you doing?" he whispered. Mason didn't answer. He stood up slowly, eyes half-lidded, face expressionless. He wasn't sleepwalking, his eyes were open, but there was no recognition in them. He turned and walked toward the hallway. "Mason!" No answer. Ryan got up to follow but stopped at the edge of the hall. Mason had disappeared into the dark, heading toward the basement door. Ryan hesitated. He still doesn't know why he didn't chase after him, but something about that moment felt wrong. Like if he followed, something would happen to him too. So he waited. 3 minutes passed, then 5, and at exactly 3:13 a.m., the basement door creaked shut on its own. Ryan rushed to the door and flipped on the hallway light. The door was closed, locked, the kind of lock that clicks from the inside, the kind of lock a 12-year-old shouldn't have been able to engage behind them. He banged on it, called out, but nothing. Silence. His parents woke to his screams. They searched the entire basement, every corner. No Mason. The police were called, and for the next 2 days the house was torn apart. Every crawl space, every air duct, even the woods behind the house. Nothing. No signs of forced entry. No footprints. Mason had simply vanished. But here's where the story bends reality. 3 weeks later, Ryan's mom was organizing laundry when she found Mason's shirt, stuffed behind the dryer in the basement. It was the same one he wore the night he disappeared, folded perfectly as if placed there. The family didn't own that dryer back then. It had just been delivered that week. More strange things followed. Ryan began waking up at 3:13 a.m. every night without fail. No alarms, no noise, just his eyes snapping open at the exact same time. Sometimes he thought he saw movement at the edge of his vision. A silhouette in the hallway. A shadow bending wrong at the corners. Once, he swore he saw someone crouched by the fish tank. But when he turned the lights on, nothing was there. His parents wrote it off as trauma, grief, guilt. But Ryan knew better. He started recording himself as he slept. An old camcorder, set to run from midnight to 6 a.m. For a week, nothing showed. Just tossing, turning, and restless dreams. Until night 8. At exactly 3:13 a.m. on the tape, Ryan sits bolt upright in bed, eyes wide. The camera catches him murmuring something over and over. He's still down there. His voice sounds strange, almost mechanical. Not panicked, not conscious. Then, for a split second, the audio glitches. And in that split second, the video captures something behind him. A pale figure in the hallway. Same height, same posture, wearing the same shirt Mason had worn. The frame freezes, then goes static. Ryan never slept in that house again. His family moved 2 months later. To this day, Mason has never been found. No body, no leads, just a locked door, a missing kid, and a timeline that stopped at 3:13 a.m. But let's go deeper, because this story isn't just about a disappearance. It's about time, memory, and the things we bury beneath routine. The number 313 is oddly specific. Not 3 a.m., the classic witching hour, but a delayed echo of it, as if whatever happened didn't belong to our hour, but to something adjacent to it, something outside the regular beat of time. There's also the sleepwalking behavior, except Mason wasn't asleep. He moved deliberately, without fear, as if he knew where he was going. And yet, there's no explanation for how he locked the basement door from inside unless the lock was never meant to keep things out, but to keep something in. The shirt behind the dryer? That's not a leftover clue. It's a message, a calling card, folded, placed, not discarded. It's as if something wanted them to find it, to remember, like Mason wasn't just gone, but partially erased, deliberately folded out of time, like a page missing from a diary. And then there's Ryan's sleep recordings. The glitch, the figure. We often think of ghosts as echoes of the dead, but what if some are simply misplaced? Like data corrupted in memory. Mason may not be dead in the traditional sense, He might be trapped in a moment, caught at 3:13 a.m., forever walking that hallway in a loop the living can't access. Which brings us to the question that haunts Ryan still. If someone can vanish so completely, what's to say they can't come back? The last time Ryan spoke publicly about it, he said he doesn't watch the footage anymore. But he keeps the camcorder locked in a box. Because sometimes, late at night, he swears he still hears it rewind on its own. And always at the same time. 3:13 a.m. Have you ever laid in bed, just about to fall asleep, and felt like something was already awake beneath you? I was 12 when I first heard it. A whisper, not loud, not angry, just present. Soft enough that I could have blamed it on my imagination. But there's a moment, a tipping point, when your brain can't write it off anymore. When your body knows, even if your mind refuses. That was the moment I realized something was whispering from inside the mattress I was lying on. It was the first sleepover I ever had at my cousin Lexi's new house. Her family had just moved into a fixer-upper from the 1960s, nothing fancy. It had that lingering smell of stale carpet and mothballs. Lexi's room wasn't ready yet, so we were sleeping in the guest room upstairs. It had a full-sized bed and a thin foam mattress on the floor. Being the guest, Lexi insisted I take the bed. It sagged in the middle and creaked whenever I turned, but I wasn't complaining. Not until the room got quiet. It was late, past 1 a.m., and we just finished watching a horror movie on her tablet. We were giggling under the covers, whispering about jump scares, when Lexi suddenly fell asleep mid-sentence. Her breathing shifted almost instantly. Heavy, rhythmic. I was left staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it tick every few seconds like a metronome for the dark. That's when I heard it. A whisper. Beneath me. No clear words. Just breath. Hushed syllables. The mattress warmed unnaturally under my back, as if something had been lying there before me. I froze. I thought maybe it was Lexi. Maybe she was talking in her sleep. But the voice didn't match. It was lower, older, genderless, almost like the dry rustle of leaves. I turned my head slowly. Lexi's mouth was closed, her face slack with sleep. She hadn't moved. The whispering stopped. At first, I told myself it was air trapped in the mattress coils or maybe the house settling. But it happened again. Louder this time. A few scattered phrases, almost like fragments of a dream. Don't move. Still watching. It's warmer when you sleep. I felt the pressure change under me, like something was adjusting, repositioning beneath the layers of fabric and springs. I could almost feel fingers brushing the canvas lining inside the mattress. I told myself not to panic, not to scream, because screaming would make it real. And worse, if it was real, I didn't want to let it know I'd heard it. Instead, I slid out of bed slowly and sat on the carpet, right next to Lexi on the foam pad. She stirred for a moment and mumbled something I couldn't make out. I didn't respond. I just stared at the bed. It didn't make a sound. Not until I turned away. A sharp, single creak echoed out, followed by a long sigh. Not from above, but from within the mattress. Like something had exhaled through the padding. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I asked Lexi if anyone had ever used the guest room mattress before. She shrugged and said it came with the house. Kind of gross, she added. But my parents said we'd replace it eventually. When I pushed further, she told me something strange. Apparently, the house had been empty for years. The last person who lived there was an elderly woman who died in hospice care. Except the guest room wasn't a bedroom back then. It was her sewing room, her workshop. But here's the strange part. Lexi said her parents found the mattress already there. Still made up, sheets folded, as if someone had recently stayed the night. There was no record of anyone else entering the house before they bought it. I tried to brush it off. I didn't say anything about the whispering. That night, we stayed up playing card games and eating microwave popcorn. We avoided the room until we were too tired to care. Lexi flopped on the floor mattress again, and I hesitated before lying back on the bed. It didn't take long. The whisper returned. Only this time it sounded impatient. The voice pressed against my ear through the layers, closer than ever. You left me cold last night. Why'd you leave? So lonely down here. I snapped upright. Lexi muttered something, half asleep. I whispered, "Did you hear that?" She nodded slightly. The whispering? I froze. You heard it too? She rolled to face me. I thought that was you. We didn't sleep that night either. The next day, we told her parents. They laughed it off. Said old houses make weird noises, that maybe there was air stuck in the pipes or some kind of vibration through the floorboards. Lexi and I exchanged looks. We both knew what we'd heard wasn't plumbing. By the third night, her dad had flipped the mattress over and checked underneath. Nothing. Just dust. A few spiderwebs and old hardwood. But that night was different. The mattress didn't whisper. It moved. Not with sound. Not with voice. But with presence. The weight beneath me didn't feel passive anymore. It felt active. Like it was waiting. As I lay in bed, eyes wide open, the padding beneath my back subtly shifted, like lungs inflating. Then a sudden sharp indentation pressed into my shoulder blade from underneath. Then another at my lower back. Then a third near my neck, like fingers kneading gently from inside the foam. It wasn't trying to scare me anymore. It was trying to hold me in place. I jumped off and dragged Lexi out of the room. She was groggy and confused, but the look in my eyes said enough. We slept on the couch in the living room that night. The hallway to the guest room felt darker than it should have. Like the shadows knew what we'd done. A week later, Lexi called me in the middle of the night. Her voice was shaking. I could hear it in her breathing. She told me they'd finally thrown the mattress out, left it on the curb for pickup. But that night, the house had been filled with noise. Whispering, but not from the room. Came from the vents. From inside the walls. Then it settled again. Into silence. Until Lexi sat on her new bed and heard it. Just once. A single whisper, muffled and dry. Still warmer when you sleep. We never figured out what it was. Paranormal? Residual energy? Or something older? Something that used the mattress as a cocoon? But I think about it sometimes. Every time I sleep on a mattress that isn't mine. Every time the springs creak in just the wrong way. I wonder if that whisper was ever really gone. Or if it simply moved on to someone else's guest room. Waiting beneath the spare mattress. It was supposed to be just another sleepover. Pizza, horror movies, and gossip in a basement lit by fairy lights. Nothing unusual. Until we found the mask. The sleepover was at my friend Ria's house. An old Victorian tucked away behind rows of thick hedges and drooping trees. Her family had just moved in, and everything about the place had that lingering smell of dust and something faintly sweet, like flowers that had died long ago. We were a group of 5, Ria, myself, Danny, Jules, and Liv. We were all around 13, just old enough to think we weren't scared of anything, and just young enough to still believe in dares. The night started normally. We watched an old horror movie from the 70s with bad special effects and even worse acting. But sometime around 1:30 a.m., when the energy had started to die down and the snacks were running low, Jules suggested we explore the attic. Ria hesitated. My mom said it's off limits, she said, chewing her thumbnail. There's a bunch of old stuff from the previous owners. That was all we needed to hear. The forbidden always sounds like an invitation when you're 13. We crept upstairs, barefoot and giggling, trying not to make noise. The attic door was a pull-down ladder in the hallway ceiling. Jules tugged the rope, and it groaned down slowly, like it hadn't been touched in years. A rush of cold air spilled down from the opening, and the smell hit us. Old wood, mildew, and something sharp underneath. Not quite rot, not quite metal, just wrong. The attic was cluttered with dusty boxes, broken furniture, and crooked picture frames. But near the back, half covered by a moth-eaten sheet, was an antique vanity. And sitting on the vanity, perfectly centered, was the mask. It was porcelain white, with sharp cheekbones, hollow black eyes, and lips painted a deep red. Not smiling, not frowning, just frozen. The kind of expression that doesn't mean anything at first, until you stare too long and realize you don't like the way it's looking at you. Danny picked it up. "It's heavy," she said, flipping it over. "There's something scratched inside." She read it aloud. "He who wears my face becomes me." Liv laughed. Sounds like a bad poem, probably part of some costume. But the air felt thicker now. The attic seemed smaller, colder. Jules dared Rhea to put it on. Rhea shook her head. "No way. That thing gives me the creeps." Then Danny did what Danny always did. She shrugged and slid it over her face. We laughed. We told her she looked like something out of a haunted theater. But when she didn't laugh back, we stopped. "Danny," Jules said, stepping forward. The mask turned toward her slowly. Too slowly. "I feel weird," Danny finally said, her voice muffled through the porcelain. Like I'm not thinking my thoughts." She reached up to take it off, but her hands stopped, shaking mid-air, then falling to her sides. "Take it off," Rhea said, more serious now. "Seriously." Danny's hands twitched again. Then she began to laugh, except it didn't sound like her laugh. It was staccato, mechanical, like someone trying to copy the sound of a laugh without ever having heard one. Rhea stepped forward and yanked the mask off. Danny collapsed, eyes wide, chest heaving. "I wasn't doing that," she whispered. "I couldn't move. I could see everything, but it felt like someone else was inside me." We didn't speak on the way back down to the basement. We didn't speak while we laid out our sleeping bags. And we definitely didn't sleep. That might have been the end of it. Except, in the morning, the mask was on the basement stairs. None of us had brought it down. No one admitted touching it again. Rhea's parents weren't even home. They'd gone to a wedding and left us alone for the night. We tried to brush it off. Maybe we left the attic door open. Maybe it slid. Maybe we were just tired and scared and imagining things. But that afternoon, Liv called Rhea in tears. She said she saw the mask outside her bedroom window. She lives on the second floor. Her parents searched the yard. Found nothing. The mask wasn't at Rhea's house anymore. That night, Jules woke up to find the mask at the foot of her bed. She screamed. Her parents thought someone had broken in. But all the doors were locked. No sign of forced entry. No sign of anyone at all. Then it showed up at Danny's. Each of us, one by one. Always silent. Always waiting. Always closer than it should have been. I got it last. I woke up and it was sitting on my pillow. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stared at it. I stared back. And in the silence, I thought I heard breathing. Not mine. Not anyone else's. Just faint, hollow, and inside my head. We gathered again, this time in daylight. In Rhea's backyard. We brought the mask in a plastic bag. Like it was evidence in a crime we couldn't explain. We didn't know what to do. Burn it? Bury it? Throw it in the river? We settled on burying it. Deep, beneath the oldest tree in her yard. No ceremony. No words. Just fear. But that night Rhea texted us a picture. It was back on the vanity. Exactly where we found it. We never touched it again. Never spoke of it. Danny moved to another state. Liv stopped talking to us altogether. Jules transferred schools. Rhea's family sold the house the following year. Me? I kept dreaming about it. The mask. Except now I was wearing it. Trapped behind it. Screaming. But no one could hear me. The last time I saw it, I was walking home from work. It was late. Cold. I passed a thrift store window. Closed. Dark inside. But something caught my eye. There, behind the glass, in a sea of forgotten junk and cracked mannequins, was the mask. Sitting on a shelf. Watching. Waiting. And for a moment, I swear, smiled. It was the kind of warning that sounds almost too strange to take seriously. But when a house has only one rule, and everyone obeys it without question, you should ask yourself why. And more importantly, what happens when you don't. I was 13 the first time I stayed over at Ryan's house. He lived a few streets over, in an older part of town where the homes looked like they had secrets tucked behind every creaking doorframe. His place was different. It wasn't run down, not exactly, but it had this stillness to it, like a museum or a church when no one's talking. I noticed it the second I stepped inside. The air felt too thick. The clocks were all analog and seemed just a few minutes off. And the hallway leading to the back of the house. It was colder than the rest. Subtly, but enough to notice. His mom was polite but distant. She welcomed me in, asked about allergies, then leaned down slightly and said, "There's just one thing, boys. Don't open the door under the stairs. That's all." That was it. No scary tone. No, I'm serious emphasis. Just, don't open the door. Ryan didn't even react. He just shrugged like he'd heard it 1,000 times. That made it weirder. If you grow up with a rule like that, you'd either get used to it or get curious enough to break it. We ordered pizza, played video games, and talked about school drama until nearly midnight. I kept thinking about the door. It wasn't locked. I saw it earlier, half hidden behind a coat rack under the stairs. Just a plain white door with an old brass knob. Nothing that screamed danger. But something about it felt wrong. It wasn't centered. It looked too narrow, like it was never part of the original house. Around 1 a.m., when the house was quiet and Ryan was half asleep watching a movie, I whispered, "What's behind the door?" He didn't answer at first. Then he said, "It's just a thing my parents believe. They say opening it lets it notice you." Let what notice you? He didn't look at me. "I don't know. Just don't open it." But I did. He went to brush his teeth. I told myself I'd just look. Just for a second. No big deal. The knob was ice cold, and it turned slower than I expected, like it hadn't moved in years. When I opened it, there was no room.
No closet.
Just darkness. It didn't even look like a space at all. More like an absence. A void. It wasn't pitch black like a room with the lights off. It was deeper than black. Like it absorbed everything. My flashlight didn't even pierce it. The light just stopped. I felt cold air rush past me, like something exhaled from inside. Then, nothing. Ryan screamed when he saw me standing there. He slammed the door shut and dragged the coat rack back in front of it like he was trying to erase what just happened. "You weren't supposed to." He stopped. Then he just stared at the wall. Not the door. The wall beside it. "There were 4 pictures here," he said slowly. I looked. Only 3. He ran upstairs and came back with his mom. She looked at the wall and covered her mouth. Her hands were trembling. "Go to bed," she said softly, not to me, just to Ryan. "Take him upstairs. Now." Neither of them spoke to me the rest of the night. Couldn't sleep. I kept hearing tiny creaks beneath the floorboards. The door under the stairs wasn't even directly below us. But something moved there. Lightly, rhythmically. Not walking. Breathing. I tried telling myself it was the furnace. The house settling. Anything. But I knew the sound of a breath. Inhale. Exhale. Slow. Patient. The next morning, I noticed something had changed. Ryan's bedroom had a bookshelf across from the bed. The night before, there were 2 small ceramic bookends shaped like owls on the top shelf. One was gone. He didn't say anything. Just stared at it. "You see it too?" I asked. He nodded. "It takes small things first. Then it waits." I left by noon. Ryan didn't walk me out. His mom barely said goodbye. I avoided his house for weeks. We texted sometimes, but he was different, short, cold replies. He didn't joke around anymore. Eventually, I stopped hearing from him. Then, one night, 2 months later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was his mom. She asked if I had seen him. He hadn't come home after school. His phone was off. Police were involved. They never found him. Weeks passed. Then something strange happened. I got a package in the mail. No return address. Just a small cardboard box. Inside was one thing. A ceramic owl bookend. The missing one. There was no note.
No explanation.
Just the owl, and a faint smell of something old, like dust and cold stone. I tried to tell my parents. They thought it was a prank. I brought it to the police. They logged it, said they'd follow up. They never did. But things started changing after that. My bedroom door would be cracked open in the morning. I always closed it at night. I'd hear a soft tapping from inside my closet. Just once, always around 3 a.m. I started keeping my phone under my pillow, flashlight on standby. Couldn't sleep. I was afraid I'd see that same impossible darkness, leaking through the edges of my room. One night, it was worse. I woke up with the covers off, my feet freezing. The door to the hallway was open, and the ceramic owl had moved. It was on my desk when I went to sleep. Now it was on the windowsill, facing in. I got rid of it the next day, buried it in the woods 3 blocks from my house. I didn't tell anyone. I just wanted it gone. But here's the thing. The next morning, it was back on the desk, exactly where I'd first seen it. That's when I realized something. It didn't want me to forget. It wanted me to remember. Breaking the rule wasn't just about opening a door. It was about inviting something to follow. Not just into the house, into you. I moved the owl to the attic, locked it in a box. Then I sealed the attic door and shoved a dresser in front of it. So far, nothing. But every now and then, I hear breathing. Not loud, not fast, just soft and steady, waiting. It's strange how time seems to stretch in certain places, like in dreams or hospitals, or birthday parties that should have ended long ago, but didn't. This story begins in a neighborhood most would call ordinary. Quiet streets, trimmed hedges, the kind of place where kids ride bikes until the streetlights flicker on. That's where Emma lived. She was 12 when it happened, old enough to notice something was wrong, too young to be believed. Her best friend, Danny, had invited her to a sleepover birthday party. It was supposed to be fun, movies, cake, sleeping bags in the living room. Emma remembered her mom asking if she wanted to bring a gift, but Danny had said not to. No presents. Just come. That detail never sat right with Emma later. She arrived just before dusk. The sky was the color of bruised oranges and fading purples. Danny's house stood at the end of a cul-de-sac. It was older than the others, boxier, with yellowish siding that had begun to peel. There was something heavy about the house. Not ominous, just tired. Inside, the living room had already been decorated. Streamers drooped along the ceiling, and a deflated balloon floated against the floor like it had been there for weeks. Other girls from school were already there, sitting in a loose circle around a plastic cake with waxy white frosting. They weren't laughing. They were just waiting. Emma smiled and waved, but only Danny responded. The others just stared. The evening played out like a muted memory. Cake was served, but no one really ate. Games were played, but no one really laughed. The entire house smelled faintly of something sweet, sugary, but spoiled, like old candy left in the sun. By 10 o'clock, the lights dimmed, and the girls spread their sleeping bags in the living room. Someone turned on an old DVD, a cartoon Emma hadn't seen since she was 5. She remembered thinking that was weird. Danny used to love horror movies. This wasn't her taste. Then the TV flickered. For half a second, the image warped. The cartoon characters stopped moving, frozen mid-expression, mouths too wide, eyes too empty. Then the screen glitched and returned to normal. Nobody reacted. Emma asked Danny if she saw it, but Danny just smiled and said, "It always does that. Don't worry. They're just happy you're here." They? Emma didn't ask. Something about the way Danny said it, too casual, like it had been rehearsed, made her stomach twist. Around midnight, Emma felt the room get colder. Not physically, emotionally. The air became hollow, like all the warmth had drained. She sat up and realized all the other girls were still sitting in the same circle, unmoving, not sleeping, just sitting, staring at the television that had long since gone black. Danny turned to her. "You don't have to be scared," she said softly. "The party just doesn't end until everyone's here." Emma didn't understand. She stood up, her legs shaky, and backed toward the hallway. She wanted to call her mom. Something was wrong. Something was off. She walked into the kitchen. The clock above the sink read 12:03. A minute later, it still said 12:03. So did the microwave. And the oven. The house wasn't just old. It was stuck. Emma returned to the living room. The girls were still in the circle, but now their positions had shifted. Slightly, subtly, closer together. Their heads tilted just a bit toward her. Their smiles stretched. The floor creaked behind her. Emma turned and saw Danny standing in the hallway. Only it wasn't Danny anymore, not quite. Her face was the same but paler. Her hair slightly darker. Her eyes too calm. Not blank, not scary. Just resigned, like someone who's lived through too many yesterdays. "You really should have brought a gift," she said, her voice echoing faintly, even though the room was small. "They don't like it when someone shows up empty." Emma tried the front door. It didn't budge. The windows showed only blackness outside, as if the entire world had been turned off. She ran upstairs, heart pounding, and pushed open a bedroom door. Danny's room. Only it wasn't. It looked like a child's bedroom, but from decades ago. Porcelain dolls lined the walls. A banner hung above the bed that read, "Happy 8th birthday, Danielle," in faded letters. Emma knew Danny had just turned 13. There was something on the bed. A scrapbook. She opened it. The first few pages were normal birthday photos, a girl blowing out candles, group shots with classmates. Then the photos grew strange. Same birthday, same party, but the images became more faded, blurred. The faces repeated. Different years, same guests, same house, same cake. The last page was blank, except for a photo tucked loosely behind the cover. Emma pulled it out. It was a picture of the group downstairs, sitting in a circle on the floor, smiling toward the camera. In the back corner of the photo, Emma could see herself, or someone wearing her clothes. Her face was turned away. She dropped the book and ran. But the house was different now. The staircase didn't lead back to the same hallway. The living room was gone, replaced by a dim corridor lined with doors. Behind each one, she could hear muffled voices, laughter, music from different eras, 80s, 60s, even older. Whispers repeating the same phrase, "Just one more guest." Emma opened a door. Inside was a child's party, frozen in time. A table set with melting ice cream, paper hats, and party favors. In the center was a girl sitting at the head, eyes glazed over, smiling like a puppet. The banner above her said, "Happy birthday, Elsie." She opened another door. Same scene, different girl, different name, door after door, year after year, always the same. Guests who never left, hosts who never aged. Birthday after birthday, in a house that refused to let the party end. Finally, Emma found herself back in the kitchen. The clock still read 12:03. This time Danny was waiting. "We never stop celebrating," she whispered, holding out a crumpled party hat. "And now that you're here, we can keep going. Forever." Emma's mouth went dry. Her legs felt heavy, like her body no longer belonged entirely to her. She looked down at the hat. It was already in her hands. Somewhere behind her, the TV turned on. The cartoon flickered back to life, looping the same laugh track. The girls resumed their circle. And the banner above the fireplace, one she hadn't noticed before, now read, "Happy birthday, Emma." It's strange how some places never want to let go of you. We were 16 when we held our last sleepover at Hollow Creek. It was supposed to be a tradition, one final night together before we all scattered to different high schools. Hollow Creek wasn't a town exactly, more like a dying stretch of road that clung to the edge of the woods. 3 families, 2 boarded-up shops, and an old house that didn't show up on maps. That's where we stayed. The Hollow House. We called it that because no one lived there and no one ever had. At least not that we knew of. The place belonged to Liam's uncle, who had moved overseas years ago and never came back for his belongings. It was the kind of house that felt like it held its breath when you walked inside. Air too still, silence too loud. Like the walls were listening. There were 5 of us, Liam, Claire, Jordan, Tyler, and me. We brought sleeping bags, snacks, and flashlights. The usual. But even as we laughed and tried to act normal, something felt different that night. The house was colder than it should have been in late June, and every door we closed seemed to creak back open just slightly, as if waiting for something. We set up camp in the living room, the only space that didn't feel like it had eyes. As the night went on, Tyler suggested we play Whispers, a game we made up when we were kids. One person asks a question into the darkness, and everyone else answers at once, whispering. The fun was in trying to figure out whose answer belonged to who. It was a harmless game, at least it used to be. We went around in a circle, laughing at dumb questions. Then Liam leaned forward and whispered, "Who's not supposed to be here?" There was a pause. Then 4 whispers. "You, Claire, me, the one in the hallway." We all went silent. Claire's flashlight flickered. Tyler laughed nervously, accusing Jordan of trying to scare us. But Jordan swore it wasn't him. We tried to move on, but the energy had shifted. The shadows felt deeper. The walls felt tighter. That was the first moment we should have left. Instead, we told ourselves it was just a prank, someone trying to be funny. But I kept looking at the hallway. It was darker than before. Not just unlit but almost opaque. Like it wasn't made of shadow but of absence. Around 2 a.m., Liam suggested we explore the second floor. We never went upstairs. The staircase was warped and missing a few steps, and the landing always looked slanted, like it had bent under too much weight. But that night, curiosity pulled us. The upstairs was mostly empty. One bedroom still had a rusted bed frame, a cracked mirror, and a closet with no door. Claire lingered by the mirror. "Did someone write on this?" she asked. We looked. On the fog glass was a single word. "Stay." None of us had touched the mirror. Our breath hadn't fogged it. There was no reason it should have had condensation. But the word remained, clear and deliberate, even as we watched. That was the second moment we should have left. Instead, we dared each other to check the attic. Jordan was the first up. He pulled the rope ladder, and it dropped with a slow, agonizing creak. He climbed halfway before freezing. "There's someone up there," he whispered. We thought he was joking, but when he came back down, he was pale and shaking. He wouldn't say what he saw, just kept repeating, "Don't go up, don't go up." That was the third moment we should have left. But Liam, trying to be brave, went up anyway. We waited. 5 minutes. 10. The silence was unbearable. Then his voice called down, "I'm okay. But you should see this." When we climbed up, we found Liam standing in the middle of the attic, surrounded by dozens of old toys. Dolls mostly, some handmade, all of them staring in the same direction. A cracked section of the wall near the far end. There was a symbol drawn there, circles intersecting, marked by hand. Underneath, in faded charcoal, "We sleep where they forget." Claire started crying. Jordan was muttering to himself. I felt like my skin was vibrating, like something in the room was trying to crawl inside me. Tyler turned to leave, but the ladder was gone. Not broken, not snapped, gone. The opening was sealed as if it had never been there. We screamed, pounded. The ceiling wouldn't budge. The attic had no windows, no doors, and no exit. Our phones had no signal. The room seemed smaller now. The toys, closer, like they had shifted. That was the first time we heard it. A whisper, not loud, but right next to our ears. 5 voices at once. "Who's not supposed to be here?" We were trapped for what felt like hours. Liam swore he saw someone moving in the wall. Claire said her hand was grabbed, but no one was near her. Tyler fell into a trance, staring at the dolls until we shook him. Eventually, we blacked out. When we woke up, it was morning. The attic door was open again, the toys gone. The house looked normal, quiet, empty, lifeless. We left without speaking. No one said goodbye. We tried to forget. Claire moved away. Tyler transferred schools. Jordan stopped talking to us completely. Liam, he was never quite the same. He kept saying the house had marked us, and that something crossed over that night. 2 months later, Liam went missing. They never found him. The rest of us never spoke about Hollow Creek again. But sometimes, when I'm half asleep, I hear whispers behind me, as if the house followed me home, as if it remembers. And every year, on the anniversary of that night, my mirror fogs on its own. And in that pale condensation, a word always writes itself, slow, deliberate, final. Stay. Thanks for watching. Comment where you're from. I want to see how far the darkness has spread. Don't forget to subscribe for more horror.